Então, precisava assim. É qualquer coisa como isto. Não consigo agora ver.
Loading. Message.
Distintos embaixadores. Distintos embaixadores, honrados convidados, alunos e pais.
Alice, hold on a moment. We're showing technical difficulty.
You can go.
Go, Alice.
Distintos embaixadores e excelência, honrados convidados, alunos e pais. Bom dia. É um grande prazer recebê-los aqui hoje. Sejam muito bem-vindos.
Sehr geehrte Botschafter und Exzellenzen, geehrte Gäste, Schüler und Schülerinnen, liebe Eltern, guten Morgen und ein herzliches Willkommen an alle.
Distinguished ambassadors and excellencies, honored guests, students, and parents. Good morning and a warm welcome to you all. My name is Alice and this is Jade. We are students from the International Renthouse School, and along with Kara and Shoria, will be your hosts for this evening.
Today marks a special day for us at ISR. We are welcoming our special guests and we will learn more about the United Nations Ocean Conference, co-hosted by the governments of Kenya and Portugal.
Our school is an international baccalaureate school, where we focus on becoming inquiring, knowledgeable, and caring young people who help create a better and more peaceful world. We are actively engaged in learning about and taking action towards the UN's Sustainable Development Goals and look forward to learning more throughout the day and beyond.
Let's set the scenes and learn more about the Ocean Conference.
Salvar o oceano, preservar o futuro. Este é o mote de um encontro decisivo para o futuro da humanidade. Os atuais problemas do oceano vão muito para além da sobrepesca ou da poluição. O oceano global sofre de acidificação, aumento da temperatura média, desoxigenação e perda de biodiversidade. Mas uma nova era para o oceano pode começar em Lisboa. Em junho de 2022, a capital portuguesa recebe a Conferência dos Oceanos das Nações Unidas. Todos os Estados-membros da ONU são convidados a participar. Governos, empresas, organizações não governamentais e universidades vão dialogar sobre melhores políticas para uma governação sustentável do oceano. Há décadas que Portugal tem um papel fundamental na diplomacia do oceano. Hoje, mais do que nunca, o país está disposto a assumir responsabilidades na construção de um novo paradigma de gestão baseado no conhecimento científico e no equilíbrio ambiental, social e económico. Organizada em conjunto com o Quênia, a Conferência dos Oceanos das Nações Unidas vai definir ações para implementar o Objetivo de Desenvolvimento Sustentável 14. Proteger a vida marinha. O tempo urge para concretizar este e os outros 16 Objetivos da Agenda 2030 da ONU. A recuperação da pandemia deve orientar-nos para uma relação mais equilibrada com a natureza.
O oceano é fundamental na regulação do clima, não só pela retenção dos gases de estufa, como pela redistribuição do calor a nível global. Tal como ficou bem reconhecido na última Cimeira Climática, a COP26, o papel do oceano é crítico no combate aos eventos extremos que têm vindo a afetar a humanidade.
Para a pesca continuar a ser uma importante fonte de proteína alimentar, tem de ser encontrado um novo ponto de equilíbrio.
Sabemos desde já que devemos olhar para o mar com outros olhos, como fonte de recursos de forma sustentável. A aposta num oceano saudável é um investimento com retorno para o ambiente, para a economia e para toda a sociedade.
Uma nova economia azul pode revolucionar os muitos usos do oceano. Nas rotas comerciais, na energia renovável, nas substâncias para fármacos, nas telecomunicações e muito mais.
O mar é muito mais do que um recurso. É fonte de bem-estar espiritual. É palco de desporto, cenário de lazer. No oceano, vamos ser mais felizes.
A humanidade é chamada a encontrar novas soluções, a alertar consciências e alterar comportamentos, a reforçar a mensagem de que só juntos podemos salvar o oceano.
A saúde dos oceanos está nas nossas mãos, em todos os pontos do globo. Cada um pode fazer a diferença. É urgente fazer as escolhas certas, agir, proteger, conservar e garantir um futuro melhor para as gerações da amanhã.
Conferência dos Oceanos das Nações Unidas. O futuro do oceano decide-se em Lisboa.
We, Gabriel. We, Mia, Gabriel, Clara, Violeta, would like to present. Gostaríamos de apresentar o Santíssimo Senhor Embaixador de Portugal.
Bon dia, good morning, everyone. Thank you very much for these welcoming words. Your Excellency Daniel Ruth, Mayor of Books, Your Excellency Ambassador Andrew Kuriani, directly from Nairobi, Mr. Martin Krebs, on behalf of His Excellency Stefan Easterman, Ambassador and Head of Prosperity and Sustainability Division of the Federal Minister of Foreign Affairs. Unfortunately, he's not able to be with us today for a health issue, but we wish him full recovery very soon, very quickly. Students all today here and accompanying us through the Zoom platform. Distinguished active participants in this event, how to address marine pollution, a vision from Switzerland. Students of the International School of Rheintal, Madam Verena Jucker, Head of Communication of Kunsthof Swiss, and Professor Peter Coldway, in representation of Foundation Bertarelli Marine Science Program, also accompanying us through the Zoom platform. My dear friends, from 27th of June to the 1st of July 2022, Lisbon will host the United Nations Ocean Conference, co-hosted by the governments of Portugal and Kenya, under the motto Scaling Up the Ocean Action based on Science and Innovation for the implementation of Goal 14, Stocktaking, Partnerships and Solutions. 8 interactive dialogues will be part of the event that should primarily follow up on issues, gaps, challenges, opportunities, and partnerships identified and discussed at the 2017 conference and the 2018 Kenya Sustainable Blue Economy Conference. While factoring in the effects of the COVID-19 pandemic, they should recommend further innovative, tangible, and measurable action for the purpose of meeting all targets of this goal dedicated to life below water. Taking into consideration the non-interest of the Swiss authorities, student community, local ONGs, and other various important economic players in addressing all the different challenges around the protection of the ecosystem, implementing green policies to the preservation of seas and the environment, promoting good practices in recycling waste and protect the oceans, the dialogue addressing marine pollution was considered as being of special interest to the educational community and research society in Switzerland. It is therefore with enthusiasm and expectation that I am honored to participate today in this initiative aimed to raise awareness within a large and committed school environment on how to preserve and protect our oceans by preventing and avoiding marine pollution. There is a widespread consensus that the ocean cannot absorb the current number of anthropogenic residues, that the problem of marine litter is not a myth, and that everyone should be involved. To tackle this issue, a wide range of programs need to be developed, including ocean literacy, initiatives targeting schools and the public, as a fundamental tool to avoid the existing emotional gap in society regarding ocean issues. Today, and besides feedback on the theme by the local student community, we will have the opportunity to understand how the private sector can contribute to tackling pollution in the oceans, with a specific commitment already under implementation by the plastic industry in Switzerland, but also to listen to the extraordinary experience and commitments of researchers and scientists to make us aware of current threats, challenges, and sound recommendations in order to prevent further agony of our oceans and marine life. It is my firm conviction that we all leave this venue with an accurate vision of the current situation of marine life, challenges we need to face, and solutions we should implement in the very near future for a better preservation of oceans and benefit of our own lives. Allow me to conclude by thanking the International School of Rheintal that hosted us and supported the idea since the first moment we established contact to prepare and organize the event with full commitment and enthusiasm of their director, of their students, of the local community itself. The coordination of Portuguese teaching in Switzerland that came on board since the beginning of participation in a very actively way. And we are now connected with the world, also with the engagement of the coordination of Portuguese teaching. My thanks also to the Agency for Investment and Commerce, Portuguese agency, CEPE, that facilitate and promote contact with different active partners and sponsors. Thank you also to the Federal Department of Foreign Affairs, Foundation Bartarelli, and Gustav Suisse for their generous and committed participation and excellent contributions publicly expressed today. Delta Suisse for their support with beverages, coffee, and other generous contribution. Let's all make a better future for our oceans, source of life and joy. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Ambassador. This ocean conference comes at critical times as the world is seeking to address deep-rooted problems and to start a new chapter of global ocean action.
It is so important that all people and nations engage. Having the conference co-hosted across 2 continents signals the importance of this global endeavor. It is a great honor to also welcome His Excellency, the Ambassador of Kenya, Mr. Andrew Sirani.
Thank you, and good morning, everybody. Your Excellency, Julio Vilela, Ambassador of Portugal, Ms. Liz Free, CEO, International School of Rheintal, Ambassador Stefan Esterman, Head of Prosperity and Sustainability in the Division of the Federal Department of Foreign Affairs, students, our online participants, ladies and gentlemen. It is with great pleasure that I join you this morning for this discussion on a very key subject, and that is marine pollution. This is what that will feature at the 2022 United Nations Conference that will be held from 27th June to 1st June, Portugal. The conference will be co-hosted by Kenya and Portugal under the theme based on Sorry. Let me continue. Sorry for that technical. It is expected that the forthcoming conference will build on the conference held in New York in June 2017. It is an opportunity to get through solution-oriented partnerships, voluntary commitments aimed at reversing the decline of the health of the oceans, activity in the oceans. Our meeting today is one of the Blue Talks and is aimed at creating interest in 2020. To look at how Switzerland is I've seen a message, you may not be hearing. Disconnect the camera and then hopefully you'll be able to hear me better. As I was saying, to provide for stakeholders, members of the public and private to be encouraged in the debate, and then also provide the opportunity to look at how Switzerland is addressing one of the key topics of the conference, the Oceans Conference, and receive the views of the youth in Switzerland on the Oceans Conference. Pollution that destroys the ecosystem. This includes light, noise, and biological and chemical balance of life on oceans are vital to our trade and industry. Unfortunately, human activity has experienced the effects of the imbalance caused by this pollution. Concern due to its scale. More than 8 million tons of plastics enter the ocean. Break the plastic in water. Sorry, it is important to note that most microbribes from rivers and sewage, hence any country with lakes or a river system connected to the oceans can contribute to this problem. Indeed, with an extensive system
Okay. James?
After the Shame that we have technical problems. However, it's a great honor to speak here speaking today, and we appreciate you coming to ISR to share the importance of this work.
You're learning about where we have come from, the situation we currently face, and our aspirations for the future. The United Nations identifies our generation, 14 to 29 years old, as the largest generation in history. May I now introduce our CEO and Director, Liz Free, who will tell us a little bit more about the importance of education and the power of our generation.
How's everybody doing? A little shuffle if you need to whilst I'm talking. So when I started to look at this conference, I started to do some research around the countries involved. And I came across a quote from the President of the Republic of Kenya, His Excellency Uhuru Kenyatta. And he said, global challenges call for global responses. Waste, although produced locally, is impacting negatively on land and marine life. Globalization of the local and localization of the global is our new normal. Switzerland, some of you may have noticed, is a landlocked country. It is not immune, however, in its responsibility. And neither is we as educators and in our global profession. In the International Baccalaureate, we think about sustainable teaching for a sustainable world. We work towards developing inquiring, knowledgeable, and caring young people who help to create a better and more peaceful world through education that builds intercultural understanding and respect. We know that our future is defined by your future. We need you, young people, to be empowered as global citizens, to take action in saving our oceans and protecting our future. One of the major initiatives you may have come across is hashtag, I know I'm that cool, oh yes, hashtag Generation IB. If you haven't already, those of you with Instagram will be on it later, I know, not during school hours, of course, because we don't have phones on the premises. But as you get to the gates of school, hashtag Generation IB. In the next 50 years, we will need your solutions to global challenges. Today, I hope that you will be inspired by what others in the IB community are doing, and we will hear from some of our students later, by what the people here are doing and online. Hopefully, our technical problems will improve in a moment. And that you will begin by thinking about what you can do and what you can contribute. I invite you to take inspiration from today, from hashtag Generation IB. What was it, just so I know you've all got it? Hashtag. One more time with a bit more confidence. Thank you. Right, so I'll see that later. I'll be looking at the hashtag and following you. So you're going to take inspiration today. You might be looking at ocean pollution. You might consider things like, how can we alleviate the effects of climate change for future generations? What are the most important energy solutions for the future? How can urban planning help protect our environment? What if you only lived off recycled materials? As you define your challenge, think about these aspects. Define the challenge you want to find a solution for. Build a team, and we'll hear some examples of that later. Present your world-changing ideas and use hashtag on Twitter, I know that's for older people, or Instagram for you young cool people. We can all make a difference. And there's a quote that I often come back to by the inimitable Margaret Mead. And Margaret Mead said, "Never doubt that a small group of thoughtful, committed citizens can change the world. Indeed, it's the only thing that ever has." Making a commitment to a sustainable future and a sustainable community is the responsibility of us all. And on this note, I am delighted to welcome Dr. Good, the Starred President of Books, to formally welcome you to the local and global international community of books, where we at the International School Rheintal are privileged to be based and from where we broadcast today. Thank you, Daniel Wood.
Thank you very much, Liz, for the warm welcoming. Your Eminences, your ladies and gentlemen, and dear students of the International School here in Books. The theme of today's event is very important, not only for us, not only for us, but for humanity. As we all know, the oceans are absolutely essential for the survival of our planet. Without healthy seas, humanity will not survive. The sad thing is that the oceans are mainly threatened by us humans. Pollution with toxic chemicals or with plastics is caused by us, not to mention global warming and its interaction with the oceans. It would be naive to believe that we here in Switzerland, so far away from the sea, would not be affected by these global changes in the oceans. And it would be just as naive to believe that we here in Switzerland are not also partly to blame for the pollution of the oceans. I'm hopeful that many young people in our country are also thinking more about this. You're a good example for that. And they want to make a concrete, personal, as Liz Rees said, personal contribution to solving the problems. Dear students, I'm eager to hear your ideas on how we can all help solve these big problems together. Each of us can make a contribution, big or small. Thank you very much for inviting us to this exciting event. I wish us many good and realizable ideas. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Ms. Free and Dr. Wood. Now we invite Martin Krebs on behalf of His Excellency, Mr. Ambassador Stefan Easterman, Head of the Prosperity and Sustainability Division at the FDFA State Secretary in Bern.
Ambassadors, thank you very much for having me here. Karibuni to Kenya. I know very well your country. We have, luckily or not here, what we had a few days was Chuakali. Maybe you want to tell students what this is. This means under the fire sun. So I always said I like to have Chuakali because I envy for the sea. We may all recall probably when we first went to the sea. As it was said, we are a landlocked country in Switzerland. Is there worse than being a landlocked country in the Rheintal? Yes, there is something worse to be a landlocked country. It is to be, as in the neighborhood, and probably ambassador, you are as well the ambassador too, Fürstentum Liechtenstein. And what they're a double landlocked country. But when you look, at the prosperity of Liechtenstein and in Switzerland, you may probably say, it is not that bad to be a landlocked country. But being a landlocked country does in no way mean that you are mindlocked. So landlocked is not the same as mindlocked. Landlocked means an openness for the sea, even when you do not have the privilege, to have it outside of your doorstep. But those are my notes. I wrote them for my ambassador. So I can talk a bit more freely probably about what I'm doing in my daily life when I think about the oceans. And believe me, I think a lot about the oceans. My Swiss watch is blue. It's an ocean series. My coat is blue, my socks are blue, so we are very ocean going. And I'm very happy, that we will be joined later by the Bettarelli Foundation, because the Bettarelli family, and mainly Donna, is very ocean champion. And we're very, very proud, having that big figureheads, telling us, the story about the oceans and how we should care for it. Okay, where is our relationship? How it started to the ocean? Of course, we all come out of the water. Without the oceans, there wouldn't be any life, as we experience it nowadays. We would be some other creatures. Maybe as well happy, we don't know. But without the oceans, probably, there wouldn't be, human beings, there wouldn't be food for play, there wouldn't be oxygen, because the oceans are providing 50% of the oxygen we breathe. We came to our relation to the oceans as a state by what, Mr. Mayor? By the Rhine. This is our lifeline, because the Rhine gives us the right, to ship freely goods to the sea. 1868, the Mannheim Rhine Navigation Act. And of course, this was technical then. Everybody was seeing, the economical factor. But later on, we realized, that the lifeline to the sea is not only a one-side lifeline that we can provide, goods and that we can ship goods back. But we realized, that for countries which live on the Rhine is their life for drinking water. Do you know by chance, which other oceans than the Atlantic Ocean Switzerland is feeding in with its water? We have the Rhone, which is feeding to the Mediterranean, and we have the Inn River, which is one of the big tributaries to the Danube, which goes in the Black Sea. So actually, our Swiss water flows to 3 oceans. And this gives us really a responsibility for 3 oceans. So later on, we remarked that it is not just an economical factor to be tied to the ocean by rivers. We remarked, our co-responsibility. And as an example, our agriculture, you have a lot of agriculture in the Rhine Valley, is as well still producing too much nutrients which are ending up in the Rhine. Later on, we had, I wouldn't say it was stupidity, maybe it was a lack of knowledge. We started to dump our radioactive waste in the ocean. Later on in the year 2000, later found out probably was not the smartest idea. And that's why Switzerland joined the OSPAR Commission, the Oslo-Paris Commission on the Protection of the Northeast Atlantic. Because our radioactive waste is as well somewhere down there. And by the OSPAR Commission, we participate in international monitoring actions because we do not want, that waste eventually turns to an even bigger nation as it is already. So you see, we are manifold tied to the oceans. Nowadays, of course, there is more. It is not just radioactive waste, it's not just nutrients, it is as well plastic. And yeah, let's say, I'm halfway pleased if I look, what you have on your table, and those which are still using, those PET bottles, maybe they fill them with our beautiful Swiss Rhine water for free. Mm-hmm. And we must say as well, I don't know where you come from, but always remind that, it is a privilege to have drinking water, from the taps. Remind that, please, guys. When you start now your summer holidays and you go to the sea, be aware of, don't drop things on the seashore, take it back home. And maybe even, when you use sunscreens, which is of course advisable, use a sunscreen which has no microplastics in it. And I know, you might imagine I was a very good, obedient scholar. It was always nice to my teachers and I never sucked. But please, your relationship with your teachers, this is among you guys. but among us is with that, those straws. You know where they end up, though, those plastic straws. So please do not suck on straws or use one which is out of cardboard or something else. So you all can make a contribution, that the ocean, the azul, stays blue and that it is getting better. And I must tell you, when we all join hands on ocean protection, we can advance. And sometimes as well, Switzerland is taking profit out of data provided by the European Union, whether we like it or not. But the European Union told us in an assessment that the shore quality in Europe enhanced a lot. And I think it's back now, 80 or 85% of basic facility of basic shores in Europe. I think in Portugal it's probably 100%, have a blue flag, which means, safe swimming. When I was a child, in our rivers, we could not swim. Huh? We did a lot, and in the same way we join hands and we do common action, we can restore our oceans, which is a livelihood, for 1/3 mankind. Something last, when you do a dating session in the United Nations, we do not have yet, those electronic things. We use our flag. And then you move around in the United Nations and then your minister has a bilateral with Portugal. And you don't know those guys, maybe, you just need an name. So you wave your flag and so you match each other. But is there something wrong with that flag? No, it's perfect. Way. The normal Swiss flag, the way we use inlands is a square. This is not a square, but this is our maritime flag. So they're a small hope for us. But as we do in maritime politics, and marine preservation, we adhere to international standards and we want to enhance even international standards. So we said, well, guys, for that purpose, we take just the normal flag as everybody do. We adhere to international standards and we try to help to enhance them. Thank you very, very much, Ambassador. I wish you all the best to your government, to yourself at the conference, which is a big thing. And I know it will have a tremendous effect on all of us. And please, students, take home lessons, No plastic, no sunscreen, with micro pellets. And don't get scared, There's no such thing as the croc box. I'm always wearing Crocs. And somebody told me, well, do you have the Crocs box? You know what that is when you have, those small round dots on your feet. So enjoy your summer, jump into the sea and say, what a beautiful ocean it is. Thank you, guys. Thank you so much.
Okay, we've just had a little conversation. We've slightly changed the program. We thought it was really important that we could hear the message from His Excellency, the Ambassador of Kenya. And obviously we have a technological issue. So what we're going to do, we're going to invite the Deputy Head of Mission, Madame Judy Matoni Nihau, on behalf of the Ambassador, if this is okay, where we have his speech prepared and she will be able to read it to you so that you can hear and really comprehend what the Ambassador was hoping to share with us today. Whilst we're just waiting a moment for our speaker to join us, you want to have a little shuffle? So I know you've been sat for a little while. Make yourselves comfortable. If you need to stand for a moment, please do. Yes.
Morning. Thank you for giving me the opportunity to read the remarks of His Excellency Ambassador Andrew Running. I can read as he was saying it so that you can get it verbatim as he was speaking. And he gave his address and to His Excellency Julio Vilela, Ambassador of Portugal, Liz Free, the CEO of the International School of Later, Ambassador Stephen Easterman, Head of Prosperity and Sustainability Division at the FDSA, and to you students, our guests, our online participants, ladies and gentlemen, good morning. It is with great pleasure that I join you this morning for this discussion on a very key subject affecting us all today, and that is marine pollution. This is one of the core topics which will feature at the 2022 United Nations Oceans Conference that will be held on 27th June to 1st July 2022 in Lisbon, Portugal. The conference will be co-hosted by Kenya and Portugal under the theme Scaling Up the Ocean Action based on science and innovation. That's why we are here with these students for the implementation of the SDG Goal 14, which is all about stock-taking, partnerships, and solutions. The objective is to provide a critical opportunity to mobilize partnership and increase investment in science-driven approaches to achieve Goal 14. It is expected that the forthcoming conference will build on the success of the United Nations conference held in New York in June 2017. It is also anticipated that it will provide an opportunity to galvanize action through solution-oriented partnerships, financial pledges, and voluntary commitments aimed at reversing the decline of the health of the oceans and concomitantly increasing productivity in the oceans. Our meeting today, this Blue Talk, is one of the Blue Talks, all the avenues leading to that process, and it is aimed at creating interest and awareness about the 2022 conference, encouraging participation in it by relevant stakeholders in the public and private sectors, contextualizing the debates, as well as having the opportunity to look at how Switzerland is addressing one of the key topics of that conference, and in particular, in the views of youth in Switzerland, as the ambassador has done this morning. Marine pollution encompasses many types of pollution, as you know, that disrupt the marine ecosystem. This includes chemicals, light, noise, and plastic pollution. Oceans cover 71% of our planet Earth, and that's just oceans, 71%. We have not talked about the lakes, we have not talked about the rivers, and chemical balance of life on Earth. Oceans are vital to our commerce, trade, and industry. Unfortunately, human activity has polluted the oceans, and we have started to experience the effects of the imbalance caused by this pollution. Plastics pollution in the marine ecosystem is of particular concern due to its scale. More than 8 million tons of plastic enter the oceans every year. If no action is taken to break the current trends, the amount of plastic in marine waters is expected to more than double in the next 10 years. How old are you going to be in the next 10 years? So it's in your lifetime, isn't it?
20.
So in the next 10 years, it will be more than 8 million tons of plastic that will be thrown into the ocean. So it will be 16 million if we don't do anything about it. So marine plastic pollution is therefore a serious threat to both ocean and other water bodies, health and public health worldwide, as well as wildlife. Given that the vast part of oceans are owned by all of us commonly as human race, I believe you know how the oceans are. There's the part that nations own that are very close to them, where they put their ports. There's a part that they call economic zone, that is, they are added a few miles. Then the rest of the ocean is owned by all human beings commonly. That's why then concerted efforts to resolve this pollution crisis and clean up of the marine ecosystem is very critical. It is important to note that most microplastic pollution in oceans arrives from rivers and sewage. Hence, any country with lakes or river system connected to the oceans can contribute to this problem. Indeed, with an extensive system of rivers and lakes, many of them with cities and urban centers located strategically near or around them, Switzerland faces the potential for pollution from various types of plastic waste and microgranules, and needs to be able to continuously monitor its water bodies to keep them free of pollution. An important step towards cleaning up the marine ecosystem was taken on 2nd March 2022 when the heads of state, ministers of environment, and other representatives from UN member states endorsed a historic resolution on the UN Environment and Assembly, for UNEA 5 in Nairobi, and it was to end plastic pollution and forge an international legally binding agreement by 2024. That is your time. So this is time you can take active participation towards achieving this goal. The solution outlines diverse alternatives to address the full life cycle of plastics, from the production to the design of reusable and recyclable products and materials, and to their disposal. In tandem with the efforts on the world stage, one way of assisting in the campaign of mitigating marine pollution is by spreading the word. That is one of our objectives today, to spread the gospel that our marine life is suffocating from the effects of human pollution and needs your personal efforts towards mitigating the same. Are you taking in the gospel today? People have slept. Am I speaking? Yes. We are preaching. Am I teaching anyone today? So we need your efforts to this. No doubt the panelists who are with us today, as well as the student body, will provide us with some insightful perspectives on how to address the challenge of achieving a cleaner, healthier marine environment. Let me join Ambassador Vilelo in thanking the International School of Raintown, ISR, for all their efforts in facilitating the organization and the hosting of this Blue Talk event. I equally wish to extend appreciation to all the participants, the key speakers, who will share their views with us this morning. I thank you all. Thank you.
Thank you for sharing the ambassador's speech. It gave much insight to us all. Listening to all the ambassadors and speakers so far has highlighted the significance of this issue.
We have heard so much about the action across the world, and now we turn our thoughts to Switzerland. This next session will include contributions from students and experts in the field. There will also be a possibility of a question and answer session at the end. So start to think about the questions you would like to ask any of the speakers today.
Our next speakers will consider what contributions students can make to preserve ocean life. I would like to invite Portuguese students who learn Portuguese in Switzerland as a heritage language to tell you.
My name is Eva Pais. I am from Portugal and I study Portuguese as a heritage language with the Institute of Camões. Despite the fact that I have never lived in my country, I have a strong attachment to it. Looking back at Portugal's history, the sea has always been an important part of our identity. Portugal's maritime territory is 40 times larger than its continental territory. As a result, it is no surprise that we have always been drawn to the vast and unknown ocean. The ocean represented a new path for trade and a new way to connect with other parts of the world during the 14th and 15th centuries. We now understand that the oceans are the beating heart of our planet. Without them, there would be no life on Earth. The ocean is everything to us Portuguese. It provides us some of our traditional dishes and shapes our cultural and personal identities. It provided us with jobs, sports, and recreational opportunities. The ocean represents a sense of joy, freedom, and love for the Portuguese, but it also represents a sense of loss, sadness, and grief. To conclude, I'd like to read one of the most beautiful and obvious poems about the Portuguese people's unique relationship with the ocean. The poem is called Mar Português, and it was written by Fernando Pessoa. Mar Português. Ó mar salgado, quanto do teu sal são lágrimas de Portugal. Por te cruzamos, quantas mães choraram, quantos filhos embonzaram, quantas noites ficaram por casar para que fosses nosso ao mar. Valeu a pena? Tudo vale a pena, se a alma não é pequena. Quem quer passar além do pujador, tem que passar além do dor. Deus ao mar, o perigo e o abismo deu, mas nele é que escolheu o céu. Muito obrigada.
No, we have a video before.
Oceans. Oceans of the world. Pacific, Atlantic, Indian, Arctic, Antarctic. Did you know that there is an island that is made completely out of trash? There is 300,000 tons of trash and it is the size of Europe. Was können wir tun? Recycle, reutilizar, reduzir.
Os oceanos são o principal regulador do clima. São o termostato do mundo. Eles produzem mais de 50% do oxigênio, que é mais do que as florestas tropicais juntas. Os oceanos são o habitat de vários seres vivos. Os oceanos são tão importantes quanto o seu tamanho.
A reciclagem é muito importante para o ambiente e, claro, para os nossos oceanos também. Reciclar no sítio certo e não deixar lixo no chão é muito importante, como também reduzir o nosso consumo. Reutilizar. Tudo o que nós podemos fazer nós podemos também reciclar. Na escola, por exemplo, podemos usar o papel todo e só depois pôr ao lixo, evitar fotocópias e beber água de uma garrafa de metal.
Quem te sagrou, criou-te português. Do mar e nós em ti nos deu sinal. Cumpriu-se o mar e o império se desfez. Senhor, falta cumprir-se Portugal.
De salto vencemos cabos, ultrapassamos esperanças, de salto perdemos montes Pirineus e o alto mar. De salto conquistamos Franças e Aranganças e enfrentamos Deus com as mãos a abanar.
Amor ardente e mar, contar-te longamente as misteriosas maravilhas do verbo navegar. E mar, amar as coisas perigosas.
Hello everyone, my name is Luca and thank you for having me here today. I am in 6th grade at ISR and today I'm going to be talking about my exhibition, my lines of inquiry, my action, and lastly my ideas what students could do to help our oceans. My exhibition on ocean pollution has been an interesting and challenging process. I have learned many things that are relevant to this conference. Some interesting and shocking things that I have learned were that if we don't change our behavior, there will be more plastic than fish by 2050, or that over 1 million marine animals die each year because of plastic-related issues. This has been an amazing journey from the start to the end. I can remember every single moment. This could have not been possible without my group members, Moritz and Josephine. After this, I also had some more support, like my mentor, Ms. Cherrigan, Mrs. Schnabel, and Ms. Theis. I selected ocean pollution because I am very interested in marine life, and I am a certified scuba diver. To help guide and structure my research, I created 3 lines of inquiry, because ocean pollution is a colossal issue that I could have researched about forever. The 3 key concepts I selected to focus on were change, perspective, and responsibility. I picked those 3 because I wanted to find out more about the impact humans have on our oceans, the different opinions on ocean pollution, and ways that we can limit the impact.
I'm going to be your glamorous assistant.
No, here.
Please.
Here. You have to point. Can you try?
Well, we're having all the technical difficulties today. Can we do it manually?
I'll do it again. Can you?
Can you do it manually for him?
Just a moment.
You could start on slide 4.
As part of my exhibition journey, I had to take action about my issue. Throughout my research, I found out that a beach cleanup would be a direct and rewarding way to take action. Unfortunately, Switzerland is a landlocked country, and therefore there aren't any beaches. I learned that the next best thing to do is a trash cleanup, so that trash here in Switzerland does not end up in the oceans through the Rhine or wind currents. I would also like to thank the Abfalljägers booth for answering my questions, for my understanding, and for providing the equipment for my trash cleanup. Firstly, there are many ways we in Switzerland can take action about ocean pollution, and I will tell you 3 of them. Firstly, we can organize a trash cleanup, because when we pick up trash in Switzerland, it will not end up in our oceans through the Rhine or wind currents. This would be a great idea for schools to incorporate into their school day or as an after-school activity. Next, we can also try to reduce our usage of single-use plastic. This is plastic that has only been used once and then thrown away. This is a huge problem because over 1 million marine animals die each year because of plastic-related issues, as I had mentioned before. Thirdly, we can recycle properly. Did you know that only 9% of plastic worldwide is recycled? If we recycle more effectively and efficiently, we can keep plastic out of our oceans. Thank you for listening.
hear more about your learning and the difference that it's involved. In grade 9, our students have also looked at the SDGs, more specifically at SDG 14, Life Below Water. I want to introduce Rebecca, Nightingale, and Julia, who will tell us more. Thank you, Cara. Thank you, Cara. I'm Julia, and I'm going to tell you what we're going to be talking about today. So first, we're going to introduce you to the SDG 14. Then we're going to talk about aquaculture, overfishing, coral bleaching, noise pollution, and what we can do. And then for the end, the bibliography. So introduction to the SDG 14. The Sustainable Development Goal, also known as the SDG 14, is life below water. It includes that we use aquatic resources sustainably and preserve aquatic ecosystems.
Aquaculture. So aquaculture can be understood as the raising and breeding as well as harvesting of marine animals. One of the ways we can do this is through fish farming. The current problems with fish farming is that farmed fish are fed ocean fish. This is approximately in a 1:5 ratio, which means for every kilogram of fish produced by farms, 5 kilograms of ocean fish is used. This is really unsustainable in the long run. Due to overpopulation in these fish farms, diseases are quite rampant. High concentrations of waste are also produced. Solutions to this include land-based fish farming. A diagram of that is included on the right. It reduces the overpopulation and it also reduces the waste as it's separate from the ocean itself. We can also use more sustainably produced fish such as rainbow trout, sea bass, abalone, and hake. Switzerland is really responsible for aquaculture as well. So it limits the amounts of fish that can be present in ponds and basins. Fresh water must be passed through in fish ponds so that stagnation does not occur. There's less feed and antibiotics are not necessary because of the less population, therefore there are less diseases. Fish waste is also regularly removed.
So our next topic is overfishing, which is basically when more fish than what can be replenished fast enough are caught. And this causes many problems to ocean life, including reducing the amount of fish in the ocean, obviously, as well as in the long term, it can cause irreversible damage to the ecosystem. There's usually also a lot of bycatch, which is basically all the unwanted marine life that's caught while fishing. And coral reefs are also affected in a very negative way. But luckily, there are some solutions for this, which include reintroducing endemic species, so native species, as well as marine protected areas, which are basically wildlife reserves within the ocean and help preserve biodiversity. And also eating sustainably produced fish can help. In Switzerland, there are some laws on fish import, especially for the fish salmon, cod, and tuna. And only sustainable fish sources are used, as well as there has been banning of some fishery products that are unsustainable.
So coral bleaching is when corals lose their vibrant pores and are not able to thrive. The triggers are when corals are stressed, and corals get stressed due to global warming or extreme sea temperatures. The impacts are that the corals die, and so animals lose their homes, and we have to rely on artificial seawalls. Some solutions would obviously be avoiding herbicides and pesticides and recycling. So for the Swiss perspective, it's pretty obvious that we have to minimize our CO2 pollution, and we can do that by using high-tech filters in factories or participate in global CO2 emission laws. We can also cut down fertilizers, as we heard before, because they get into the rivers and then into the oceans. And we also should be using our proper sunscreen, as we did before as well.
Noise pollution is a really big issue on the oceans. It can be defined as the exposure to elevated noise levels regularly. It can drive animals up from their habitat. It can impair communication for animals such as whales, which use ultrasonic sound to communicate thousands of kilometers away. Or some animals use echolocation to reproduce, find prey, or avoid predators, and it can disrupt their senses as well. The solutions to this include using propellers in ships that are less noisy. We can reduce the seismic vibrations and use acoustic bubble curtains in energy generation stations to reduce the noise that reaches the oceans. Switzerland has 4 major lakes: the Bodensee, the Rhine, the Zürichsee, and Lake Geneva. These are one of the most intensely navigated lakes in the world. Therefore, Switzerland has put over 4.3 billion francs into reducing the noise pollution in the oceans. They invest into using the boats electrically, using solar panels, and much more. Another 6 billion francs was outlined in a resolution in 2020.
Okay, so what can we do as students and global citizens? First of all, we can raise awareness and educate. So, for example, talk more in schools about the topic. We can also make sure that when we're eating marine life at home, so fish or something, that they're sustained from sustainable sources. And usually these packages have certifications, for example, the MCS and MSC. We can also, as Luca did, help with local cleanups, especially rivers or bank sites. We can also reduce plastic usage. So for example, instead of metal bottles, we'll use, instead of plastic bottles, we'll use metal bottles. And as well, the straws were mentioned earlier. And we can also use public transport, biking, and walking instead of cars to reduce our CO2 emissions, which are having a very negative effect on climate change, therefore also affecting the oceans.
These are our sources which we used for the presentation. Thank you.
We have heard from students about their learning and what students can do. Now, we will learn more about how the private sector can contribute to avoiding and reducing marine pollution. I'm pleased to invite Verena Hugo, Head of Communications at Kunststoff Swiss, to share her thoughts.
Hello, also from our side. I just have to share my presentation. We had the same issue yesterday that my computer needs a while and is frozen. Can you hear me? Yesterday it took a moment until the presentation started, so I'm not sure what's going to happen. Whether you're hearing me or not.
You're loud and clear.
Okay, thank you. Can you see my presentation already, or does it take? So it seems that only voice is working at the moment. I'm here for the Association of the Swiss Plastics Industry, and I thank you for inviting us to give us to give you our point of view or our inputs on also information about what the plastics industry is doing. But I would love to have my slides. You still don't see them? Ah, now we're getting closer. Yep. Now you can see my slides? All right. So we've all heard about the main threats of the oceans. It's climate change, as we've seen. It's global warming that causes sea levels to rise, that the increasing amount of CO2 enters the ocean and leads to acidification. Pollution, one of the biggest parts, plastics, but also pesticides, sewage oil spills, air pollution, invasive species. And another main threat, the students have already shown it very well, it's fishing or overfishing. Plastics are the most visible threat, and we are aware of that, and it does not belong into the ocean. But as I'm here from the plastics industry, from the Swiss plastics industry, the plastics in the ocean hardly ever comes from Switzerland. It's only very small fractions. But all these come from Switzerland. You are using plastics every day in all different kinds of applications. And many of them are produced here in Switzerland. It's about 40% that goes into packaging, another 40% goes into buildings, construction, and the rest you can see here in all different Swiss products. But anyway, where does the problem in the oceans come from? It's 97%, some calculate that do not come from Europe. And in Switzerland, it's more than 99% of plastics waste is disposed of correctly. I have also some other figures here. They are slightly different. The biggest part of plastic waste in Swiss nature and environment is tire abrasion. So what the tires lose while driving. Another part is various microplastics. There is a typo, I see it's like paint abrasion, varnish, textiles, synthetic textiles. When you wash them, all these get through your washing machines, get into the nature. And only 35% of plastics waste in Switzerland is littered. And this way goes to the oceans if it's not caught before that. How can we approach a future like this? This picture was taken on the Canadian coast 2 or 3 years ago. So it looked quite clean. We have to make economical use of resources. So it's energy, and we have also to recycle already during production. We have to prevent emissions into the environment. Also, where we as the plastics industry have an influence. The biggest industry we have is already during production. So we have to make sure that no of the little pellets plastics is made out, plastics products are produced of, are lost during production or during entering the factory, etc. We have to make sure that we can keep products more and more in the circle. So what we already do, we recycle window frames. Switzerland is extremely good in PET bottle recycling. One issue, as the student said, is do not use plastic bottles. But if you use them, especially in Switzerland, make sure they are dropped into the recycling boxes, because this is a very good example how material stays in the circle. So if you dispose of your empty PET bottles in the respective boxes, they are turned back into bottles. And we just started also recycling of agricultural foils, that they do not end up just in the incineration plants or in nature. And the further important point is design for recycling. The industry is working hard on defining guidelines, how products have to be designed that they can be easily recycled. I think it was mentioned earlier that worldwide only 9% or something of plastics are being recycled. One issue is that these products are extremely difficult to recycle if they're, for example, made out of different materials, components. So design for recycling would also mean to use as many different polymer types as possible. It has to be easy to strip or wash off all decoration that it can be recycled. And of course, packaging has to use the least amount of material and still maintain protection and functionality of the product. And as mentioned before, the most important part, prevention of entry into the environment. Recycling, I have a lot of examples here that are from Switzerland. We have a company that's a Danish company. They collect used fishing nets, and a Swiss company turns them into a valuable container. The agricultural foils are collected and recycled to new products, new foils, whatever is needed. But also plastics can reduce CO2 emissions. We've heard about the warming, etc. Plastics do have an impact on CO2 emissions if used wisely. So in the example of transport, an Airbus, a big one, consists of more than 53% of plastics, which makes it much, much lighter. A passenger module of a railway wagon is 30% lighter thanks to plastics. And an average car is about 15 to 25% lighter thanks to plastics. All this means that these means of transportation need much less energy and therefore produce less CO2. Plastics also insulate and keep us warm. About 40% of oil used, of crude oil used worldwide, used in Europe, is going to heating of buildings. Plastics insulate buildings. Construction industry and buildings produce 39% of the greenhouse gas emissions, but the insulations improve the heating efficiency. And probably everybody knows, functional underwear and fleece sweaters and jackets are made of plastic. Just have to be careful, don't wash them too often because their little fibers get into the water. Also, plastics packaging. 40% of the plastics used in Switzerland is going into packaging. But on the other hand, it keeps food fresh for longer and therefore reduces food waste. Here are some examples. Unpacked cheese still ends up in the trash bin when it's getting bad earlier. When it's packaged, much less ends up in the trash bin. Also, beef meat in modern plastics packaging can be stored up to 10 days longer. And nutritional values, etc., are preserved when packaging food in plastics, and you don't need preservatives. Anyway, now what happens with the packaging? We've seen here, we've talked about trash, plastics waste. If we look at the map, the biggest problem of ocean pollution is mismanaged waste. Why isn't that much plastics from Switzerland going into the oceans? Because we have quite well managed waste management systems. For us, it's extremely easy. If we drop our plastic things in the trash bin, it is in general turned into, it's thermic recovery, so it means it turns into energy or heating. If these systems are not available, if waste is not managed well, it ends up in the oceans. Switzerland, as a kind of clean tech nation, can support with know-how So this is also something students can do. Make sure you become engineers. Make sure you can bring the message and the know-how, maybe also to the countries you're coming from, or to countries you're going to. Make sure the know-how is exported, not the trash. And circular economy helps to prevent waste that ends up in the ocean. So we've been talking about recycling, which is quite important, but it's not the only way. And that was my short statement. If you want to follow the plastics industry, follow us. Thanks. And I'm giving back to books.
Hello, I think that was in introduction, but unfortunately you're on mute. So I'm going to carry on with my presentation anyway. Right, great. I'm hoping that you can all see the presentation in presentation mode, but please somebody speak up if not. My name's Heather Coldaway. I lead the Bertarelli Foundation's Marine Science Programme based at the Zoological Society of London in the UK. And I'm really delighted to be part of this Blue Talk series and talking to you today. Working with the Bertarelli Foundation, I obviously have very strong ties with Switzerland. I'm also an advisor to Oceano Azul Foundation in Portugal, and I've worked on seahorse populations in Portugal as well. So this event today is particularly special for me. I'd also like to really congratulate the students for the outstanding presentations earlier. You've set up my talk really, really well and covered a lot of the points that I wanted to make. And we did talk about the number of oceans and the different parts of the planet. And I wanted to just show this map to give us a slightly different perspective. There's a big red star over Europe, and you'll see that it is only actually one ocean. While we have different ocean basins, we are all connected. And this connection has been a theme of today and one we need to take forward to the path to Lisbon. The ocean is connected in this more conventional map through the ocean currents. So anything that we do in one place has impacts in the other. And as we've heard, the ocean is really important. As somebody from the UK, we love to talk about the weather, but the weather is largely driven by the ocean. The ocean is the heart of the climate system. And wherever you are on the planet, the weather is being influenced by the ocean. As we've heard, a lot of the oxygen that we breathe comes from the ocean. I just want you to take a minute. I'm sure you're all really tired listening to lots of presentations, but just take a minute to breathe in and breathe out. To breathe in and to breathe out. Every other breath that you're taking right now is coming from the plants in the ocean. The rest is obviously coming from the trees and the plants on land. But from the plankton to the seaweed and so on, that's where the rest of our oxygen's coming from. So as you spend your day, you run around, you walk from your classrooms, just think about that every other breath you take coming from the ocean. But as we've also heard, we're changing our planet rapidly. This is a really sad image from London, where the River Thames leads, like the rivers in Switzerland, into the ocean. And unfortunately, everywhere that scientists have looked, we do find plastic. On the left is 11 kilometers down, the deepest part of the ocean, the Marianas Trench, and that circle is a plastic bag. And on the right is some research I was involved with, which found microplastics at the top of Everest. And while plastic is a very visible part of our changing planet, we also have climate change, and that is perhaps less visible. But the ocean is playing an enormous role in mitigating the effects of climate. It's playing a particularly important role in absorbing heat. And to give you some sense of the scale of the role the ocean is playing, the heat it's absorbing every single day is the equivalent of 250,000 Hiroshima-sized nuclear bombs going off. And while that's been an incredible and often overlooked role, we're starting to see the impact and implications of that. And coral reefs can be really considered the canaries in the coal mine, the visible effects of what's happening to the ocean. And as we've heard, as sea surface temperatures rise, the algae that lives in the coral animals are spit out, so they look white, and that's known as coral bleaching. And if temperatures don't drop, the coral reefs die. So while we talk about climate change, we're actually in a position of climate changed. We're already seeing the day-to-day impacts of what we've done to the planet. So it is time to change. It is really important on this road to Lisbon that we act now. We don't talk about some point in the future. We don't think about what we should be doing tomorrow. We think about what we should be doing today. How we go about protecting and restoring our ocean and our planet. Now, my career in marine science and conservation began with the most weird and wonderful of ocean creatures, the seahorse, this amazing animal, this amazing fish where the male gets pregnant and they mate for life. But as I studied these creatures, we found that they were hugely vulnerable. This is a picture from space of trawlers going across the ocean catching shrimp. This is what comes out of the trawl, and right in the middle is a seahorse. And this is one of the most destructive fishing practices that also affects these incredible fish. They're also, we discovered, in international trade, with about 80 countries worldwide importing and exporting seahorses for traditional medicine, for souvenirs, and live for the aquarium trade. But we've talked a lot about problems, and what's important is there are solutions. One of the routes that we took with seahorse conservation was to work with local communities in the Philippines who are at the center of the seahorse trade to set up marine protected areas, which protected seahorses, enabled them to breed and to thrive, but also the other species that live in that area. Our initial seahorse sanctuary, our seahorse protected area, soon spread to over 30 across an entire region of the Philippines and well beyond. We know from extensive research that marine protected areas really work. We're familiar with national parks on land. We know how important they are. But unfortunately, in spite of the commitments made by countries all over the world, we're falling well short of global targets. Governments had said they would protect 10% of the ocean by 2020. And in 2022, where we are now, we still have only 7% protected and less than 3% of that highly protected. So one of the big messages for the UN Ocean Conference in Lisbon is not only to achieve 10% by 2020, but to work towards 30% ocean protection and land protection by 2030. I want to take you to one protected area, which is in the middle of the Indian Ocean, where the Bertarelli Foundation played an influential role in establishing as one of the largest marine protected areas. At this scale, the size of France, 640,000 square kilometers of fully protected ocean, we protect entire ecosystems, reef, deep sea, open ocean, and islands. This is really important, and this work has now led to a marine science program where we are understanding how these marine protected areas work in protecting species. Let's take sea turtles, for example. Sea turtles actually move. They nest in one location, and then, sorry, I'm just trying to get this animation to work. Here we go. So this is following tracks of individual turtles that have been tagged by satellite technology in the middle of the Indian Ocean on nesting beaches. And you can see firstly that we learned that over half of hawksbill turtles, which are critically endangered, and 20% of green turtles are nesting in the middle of this area. But also, if we're really going to protect turtles, we have to look at these migration corridors across the ocean, which includes going beyond political boundaries. And this is another key area of work that we're looking at for the UN Ocean Conference. How do we go about protecting the high seas, these areas beyond national jurisdiction? Our science has given other areas of hope. We've looked at nutrient transfer from seabird healthy islands with healthy seabirds and discovered how important they are in driving coral reefs. On islands with less healthy seabirds where there's invasive rats, we've learned that if we eradicate those rats, we not only restore seabird populations, we also build healthier reefs and greater fish abundance and biomass as a result. So if we rewild these oceanic islands, we can buy time, we can build resilience in these important areas. These are so-called nature-based solutions, where protecting nature makes a huge difference for not only the planet, but our relationship with it. Mangrove planting is another example. Here in the Philippines, we can see rapid restoration of this particular habitat, leading to storing more carbon than we get from tropical forests, but also protecting coastlines from storms and typhoons. But we need to innovate. As we've heard from the previous presentation, mismanaged waste is a major problem. Although I would add that our consumption in the West of plastic is far higher than many of the places that we're talking around with mismanaged waste. But this plastic waste on these beaches will last for thousands of years. And yet some of it is highly valuable. Old fishing nets, many of them like these, are made of nylon 6, which has great value in the recycling market. So we innovated. We set up a supply chain to connect these remote island communities to collect and package nets and receive income for doing so. We had to work out the logistics to move these nets and aggregate them to port, to load them into shipping containers, where they are sent to Europe, to Slovenia, where they are regenerated into nylon yarn that's used to make things like carpets and clothing. At this point, they enter the circular economy, with these carpets being recycled at the end of their life. But unfortunately, we can't recycle our way out of everything. This is an uninhabited island in the middle of the Indian Ocean, and these are single-use plastic water bottles. Waste doesn't just disappear. And these bottles come from at least 12 countries that we've recorded, including, unfortunately, Switzerland. But we need to look at what we do about that. One of our solutions has been to understand how plastics are moving through the ocean. We developed open source technology based on satellite tracking, where we can actually follow these bottle techs, these pollution trackers, as they move through the ocean. And we released some of these at the G7 summit based in the UK last year, and saw them move around the ocean following currents, wind, and the shape of the coastline. And we'll be releasing some more of these on Sunday near Lisbon. So watch this space to see where these trackers go, as we'll be following them hopefully for the next couple of years to see how they move through the ocean and understand that better. Our priority is to stop pollution at source. We've talked about the action of an individual in switching to a reusable bottle. We've talked about what you can do in your school. In the UK, there's now 3,297 plastic-free schools. Could your schools be one too? Your sports club, your community. We need to see what we can do to make the Global Plastics Treaty a reality, and how we can change from business, from governments, and from all of us taking part. But most important is we need everybody to see their place, to see they have a role in ocean conservation. We need engineers, technology experts, storytellers, photographers, artists, lawyers. It's not just the place for biologists and scientists like myself. Everybody has a role to play in ocean conservation, and it needs to start today. Our event at the Ocean Summit at the Ocean Conference in Lisbon is looking to the future and the next generation of ocean leaders. I really hope that some of these will be you attending this event today, because we certainly need all of you, and we certainly need you today. Thank you so much.
Any moment now. We're going to have around 10 minutes where you get to ask any of the speakers who spoke today a question that you may have. We're also live streaming, as we mentioned in the morning, so hello, live stream. And we will invite questions as well from those watching online all around the world as well. So if you have a question, this is how it's going to work. Prepare yourselves. We have one microphone. Here's the microphone. Can everybody see the microphone? This is like kindergarten. You can only speak if you have the microphone in your hand. So I would like to invite you to think about anything you would like to ask. We've got experts from all kinds of different fields that have spoken this evening. Think of your question, and then if you would like to ask it, you put your hand in the air. Mrs. Geiselberger will come to you with the microphone. I would like to know who you are asking the question to. If you don't remember their name, that's okay. You can just tell me what they talked about. Okay, are you ready?
Yeah.
I like it, we've got some readiness here. Okay, if you have a question, you raise your hand. Okay. Ms. Geiselberg is in charge of the microphone. Tell us who you are as well.
Violetta.
This is Violetta. What's your question, Violetta?
How did you learn all of this stuff?
What a great question. How did you learn all of this stuff? I'm going to ask Mr. Ambassador. Mr. Ambassador from Portugal, how did you learn all of this stuff? You've got to wait for the microphone. It's coming.
Thank you very much for the question. It's a difficult question to answer because I'm learning today. So I learned today a lot of things. And one of the things that is most important, I guess, is the fact that solutions for the future in terms of environmental pollution is in our hands, but not only on our hands, and not only in your shoulders. We need to act collectively. We need to act jointly. Social society, civil society, governments, everyone has to give an input in order to prevent pollution in our oceans. So I've learned a lot throughout my life in terms of profession, but I'm still learning, and that's one of the main issues. We have to keep on learning how to behave ourselves, how to contribute to a better world in terms of pollution. And as Mr. Grab said at the beginning, every day when we get up in the morning, we need to behave ourselves towards our environment and towards our families, to our friends. And by doing this, we will be contributing to a safer planet and a cleaner ocean in our lives. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Ambassador. Geiselberg is going to get very fit running up those stairs. Okay, introduce yourself, say who you are, and who the question is aimed at.
So I'm Pablo, and I want to ask a question to the man that spoke about how we should avoid microplastic in sunscreen. My question is, how do we avoid those microplastics, because they're basically everywhere? I thought they're everywhere. And how do we avoid those properly and most efficiently?
So the question is to Mr. Krebs about the use of sunscreen, which we know is very important. We've talked a lot about it in Switzerland in the last week or so. And how do we address that problem where we can stay safe but still be environmentally conscious? We need the microphone, Mrs. Butler. You need to run back down the steps. Okay, Mr. Krebs, this one's for you.
Thank you very much. I don't know, but there are some, big cosmetic companies which are now starting, and maybe you want to check out the promotion of brands. But sure, there is those micro pellets and then waste washing powders as well in your shower gel. So please check out the internet, and there is plastic-free sunscreen, there is plastic-free shower gel, and there is plastic-free washing powder. And as was said, by the representative of the plastic industry, she told me, don't become diplomats and teachers, become engineers.
Thank you.
May I just say something else? Not necessarily very only the question that was made now, but there is a human behavior that I think is very important that we keep in our minds and we proceed with it every day, every week, every month. As you all know, most likely most of you have something like this, cell phone, which is full of plastics also. And nowadays we tend to use this, I would say one every year. So every year we throw away this one and we get the new one. So why not thinking giving this a longer life? Because as long as we use it correctly, and only for the actual purpose that we need for it, we will give a life longer to the cell phone. Probably companies will not enjoy this very much, not likely, because they will not sell it. But we are protecting the environment by using 2, 3, 4 years. So we tend to use things just because they are new, and when they are not new any longer, we just throw them away. But we should keep them longer, use them safely, teach others to use them safely and correctly. And by this, we'll be protecting the ocean also. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Ambassador. We also have some questions online. So we're going to discuss a bit of the duties. So we're going to read out the question. Could you please say who it's aimed at as well?
This is from the online streaming. They didn't say their names, but to the students, they asked if you consider that your school adopts a sustainable and ecological attitude towards the environment, and if it respects the environment and water, and if it is possible to do better and more.
Okay, so to the ISR students in the house, the question is, when we look at our own school, what do we already do well in terms of sustainability, and what can we do better? Anyone want to go? Okay, at the back. Student council representative. Now to say who you are, what grade you are as well.
So hello there, I'm Leo from grade 11, and in our school I guess what we do well is one thing, is we use water bottles, at least that's what the school is advocating on, like to buy the water bottles, so we don't use the plastic ones. And even for the plastic ones, we have the recycling bins throughout the school, less than safely. But that's pretty much it. We haven't really discussed water other than this and the water bottle thing, so it's kind of limited the influence and knowledge we have about these issues in the school.
Thank you. Okay, we're going to come back down to the microphone. It's a second online question, and we're going to move back to the floor for anyone else that has a question on the floor.
Another online question from Hugo. What about microplastics health issues?
Sorry, can you say that again?
Hugo from Hugo. What about microplastics health issues?
microplastic health issues. So we have our panel speakers online as well. Is there anyone else, does anyone like to take that question?
I can answer that if that's helpful.
Yes.
Yeah. So we're just learning about the impact of microplastics on human health. It's still an area of emerging research, but we're also seeing even smaller types of microplastics called nanoplastics. And in some species, those go across the blood-brain barrier. So there's emerging really quite significant concerns. We all have plastic in us, from the food we eat, from our environment, from the air we breathe. We don't fully know the impacts of that, but there's a lot of research actively underway. So maybe that could be a future project to research into and find out more information about it. But that also drives the priority of reducing plastic. And I think it's been highlighted how important plastic is in our lives and that it's a very good thing in many areas, but almost half of the plastic produced is single-use plastic, and that's where we need to emphasize and focus our efforts to not let it end up as waste, to make sure it's recycled and so on. And to the point about microplastics in beauty products, I think my colleague from industry would probably agree that's been an area where we've seen a big shift. In the UK, legislation was introduced to ban microplastics in beauty products, so shower gels and so on. It would be worth checking the situation in Switzerland, and then you may want to write to your authorities to see if you could drive some change, because it's in many countries now, microplastics in beauty products are not allowed because there are viable alternatives. It's not essential, and we know how damaging it is for the environment. So that would be an action where you could drive change as a group of students at a national level and see that happen, or write to the manufacturers as well.
And don't buy things, inform yourself, look at the ingredients. There are different apps that you can use. I don't remember which one. I have one somewhere on my phone where you can scan the barcode on a product and it will tell you whether it contains microplastics or not. And many producers already start writing on the products whether they are microplastics free or not. And this can help a lot.
And will be a possibility of single-use plastics being banned in a country or nation.
Professor Caldwell, that was a question for you initially. Did you hear the question?
No, I don't think so.
Okay, so the question was, Lily asked whether anyone could foresee a time where a particular country banned single-use plastic.
That's already underway in a number of countries, mostly focused around reduction, but some on elimination. And in the EU, there's particular products that are being phased out, such as straws and stirrers, unnecessary plastic for most people, and where there is an alternative, as was mentioned before, of using paper or card. So it's underway, and many countries have already made significant commitments. Perhaps the ambassador from Kenya would like to talk about some of the efforts that we're seeing in countries like Kenya that are really ambitious and very positive in terms of setting global commitments.
Because you didn't hear at the back, I'm not sure if the volume was loud enough at the back, is Professor Caldwell talked about some countries making strides towards that endeavour already, making limitations on particular usage of particular products, And she also recommended that we talk to Kenya, who are doing some work in this particular field at the moment. And I would suggest, as we only have the time that we have this morning, that and we're now actually this afternoon, that we take that conversation and continue that conversation online. And I'd like to hand over to our students who will prepare for the last part of our session this afternoon.
For our closing remarks, I would like to introduce Principal Salish to say a few words.
Thank you, dear all. I would like to start my very short intervention by addressing my first words to the students, and for two reasons. Because of their commitment to this interesting participation in this event, and because they are the future of our planet.
The future of our planet, and they are well aware of it, as we have all known and listened to today. The second word is for the teachers, and because the teachers have been inspiring the students, working with them and motivating them to present what we have seen here today. And I must mention the names of the teachers. Mr. Beck, who has been involved in the ISR presentations with students and all the staff. And of course, the Portuguese heritage language teachers who have worked with their students for the presentation that we have seen here. And of course, for two other teachers, Teresa Kunfer, who is here and has been our technical assistant, and Sonia Mello, who has been the crucial network, crucial axis for all these events since the very beginning. And of course, my last word goes to the institutions and mainly to the ISR, who in the name of Mrs. Sorry. Who from the very beginning has welcomed and cherished our initiative, and also to the Portuguese ambassador, Júlio Vilela, who has came to me with this beautiful idea and has challenged the coordination of Portuguese teaching in Switzerland to or co-organize this event. So I would like to thank you all for this, for having challenged us, for having also made possible this event, this Blue Talk, which underlines the motto I take from here today, that is caring our oceans, and the motto is together we go further and we think wiser. Thank you all. Have a good night.
As the time together draws to a close, we thank you all for your time, your contributions, and commitments to action.
Special thanks go to the embassies and ambassadors of Portugal and Kenya for leading this important conversational action. Thank you, Ms. Mello, who has been instrumental in helping coordinate this event. We thank all the speakers that have contributed today. It is a privilege to have welcomed you all to our school and community.
Greta Thunberg challenged us all last year after COP26, when she said the ocean is essential to tackling climate change. So why has it been neglected in global climate talks? We have heard today that there is much work to do, but the world is awakening and readying itself for action. It will be neglected no longer.
We also look forward to watching the progress of the UN Ocean Conference next week. We are optimistic about the potential for science-based innovative solutions aimed at starting a new chapter of global action. And in conclusion, Nós temos o dever de salvar o nosso oceano, proteger o nosso futuro.
Wir haben alle die Pflicht, unseren Ozean zu retten. Schützen Sie unsere Zukunft.
We all have a duty to save our ocean, protect our future.
Thank you for coming and for joining online. We are hopeful for a bright future and wish all delegates much success in the next few weeks and months. We invite our visitors to join us for lunch at ISR and wish our online viewers a good day.
Thank you to our hosts that did an amazing job keeping us on track today. Good job. Long morning sat in a warm room, but I hope you found some aspects of that interesting and challenging, and you've taken something away that will make a difference for the future. So can I ask you to leave? We can leave from the front actually, because we can go out the side doors here and we can go out the side doors here. And can you carefully head back towards